My name is Chris Knowlton. I work with Wowza Media Systems, and we create a product called Wowza Media Server, which I'm hoping a few of you have heard of. At least you'll have seen it on your lanyard, perhaps. Today I'll be talking about how to simplify video delivery using the cloud, and at a high level what I'll be doing is really covering the differences between Amazon Web Services and Windows Azure Media Services for delivering media, as it's available today, and also laying out some of the reasons why you might want to look into one of those options if you're doing on-premises streaming today. All right, let's jump right in. So the basic media workflow is going to include a bunch of things from end to end. And when the animation's done, even more things. And so today, if you're typically you're doing some kind of streaming and you either have you've encoded some kind of content and created a file, or you have a live camera, and you're pushing through an encoder and going to a media server and then to a client. That's it at its simplest, purest form. That is a live streaming workflow we see there. And so that's pretty easy to do on your own. I could do that off of this laptop. I could put the encoder and the server on this Lenovo PC with Intel QuickSync on it and handle quite a few clients off it while doing the encoding into multiple bit rates. So that kind of scenario has gotten much more accessible. The trouble is when you start scaling out, you start having really large audiences, or you try and handle different situations that I'll get into here. As you go further down the line and start scaling out, you may start adding things like caching tiers or a CDN to handle scalability so you can reach a much larger audience. You may also add a specific encoder or media server to do your transcoding as it comes out of the encoder to break a single high definition stream up into a bunch of lower streams and possibly in different formats. So as you start adding these layers to the delivery chain, it can become more challenging to run it all yourself. And then if you look today at the number of browsers and devices and playback, mobile devices or what have you, basically the number of endpoints out there that you can possibly reach, you see this everywhere. People bring their own device and they want to be able to watch their content on it. People go on a plane now and they want to be able to use their iPad to watch content, and in some planes you can do that. So as people more and more bring the device that they want to use with them, you have more endpoints that you need to reach. And that can be a challenge when you realize how many potential formats and resolutions and bit rates that you need to have. And so recently, with recent multi-format streaming, what it looked like potentially was this. You might have a whole bunch of different servers, Flash server, IIS server, QuickTime or Darwin server, maybe some kind of IPTV server like a Casena server, all pushing a bunch of content out in parallel to reach all these different devices. And that could be definitely challenging because now you don't have a single infrastructure or a single way of controlling everything. You have all these different management systems. So if you're staying on premises, that could be a challenge. And here's my single plug for Wowza during this whole thing. You can make this a lot simpler on premises by using Wowza. But chances are, even if you do that, it starts getting more and more complicated, and maybe you don't want to spend a lot of time investing in an on-premises solution. Maybe you want somebody else to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So let's talk about that and what those options look like. There are certainly a lot of different options in the market today for delivering content, and I'm specifically going to talk about cloud delivery, where you actually control some portion of the video workflow and the pieces involved. So as digital media has gone from cutting edge to mainstream, the requirements have also changed. People, as I mentioned earlier, want to be able to take any device, anytime, anywhere, and watch their content. How many of you here have been watching some kind of content, HBO Go or Xfinity or some kind of app like that, to watch content that you would normally watch at home? Anybody? A few folks. Okay. So you are good examples of why it becomes more challenging and why there is an increasing plethora of devices and apps that need to be reached in order to watch content and get people what they want. And so the expectation, too, is that no matter where you go with that content, whether it's over the top or you're connected to a hard line in your house, you're going to get a great, rich experience, and it's going to be high definition. The latency is going to be low. You don't have to wait 10 seconds for a channel change or a content change. If it's live content, you preferably want it, not too far past real time. Even on digital video, or digital cable, you may have a second lag time. And if you have much more than that anywhere else, and you hear your neighbor down the street yelling before you because your streaming video is 20 seconds behind them, you may not like that either during that football game. And then there are different business models. People are having to do purchases or, purchase a subscription or do pay-per-view. And those get a little bit challenging too if you have to, especially if you're handling multiple subscriptions multiple monetization models. And with all these different requirements and all these different types of content that you're creating and storing and archiving and potentially reprocessing later and doing content management, asset management, all of that, it can be very challenging to maintain the infrastructure. And as we go more and more towards having all this content, you don't really want, if you are actually delivering the content, you really want to push the content and the splitting of the content into different formats as far out towards the end user as possible. Otherwise, if you have 5 different bit rates for a piece of content for one player, and maybe you have 5 different bit rates and resolutions for another, and you're trying to support 6 different player types, you may have 30 different streams that you need to maintain, 25, 30, depending on your mix. And now you're storing all of that content locally and then have to push it out to the edge for each person to ask for it. So one of the increasing trends is seeing that splitting, that repackaging from a single MP4 asset, for instance, is moving out to the edge of the network. And so increasingly, if you can find somebody else to do that work for you, you just have to create the content once, push it out to the edge, let somebody else do all the bit rate transrating, and then the stream splitting out at the edge. And if you're already doing a lot of other things for your business, having a common infrastructure in the cloud, instead of building up a special media infrastructure and a separate billing infrastructure and maybe a separate digital asset management infrastructure, you can potentially condense all that into a single infrastructure on the cloud service. So what are the benefits? Well, the first thing is basically that you save money. Now, this may not always be the case for you, and you want to measure calculate it pretty carefully and make sure that it makes sense for what you're trying to do. But for a lot of folks, it makes sense. And the reason why is that there are a number of situations where having the ability to move content up and online and try something out very fast is great. And if you're trying to do something, even just test a concept, and you can't wait to get a CapEx budget approved and wait for somebody to deliver a server to you and then wait to get the server installed and then wait to get the operating system installed, you can spin that up in about 3 minutes on something like Amazon Web Services. So suddenly what may be a several-week delay just became a very invisible or transparent barrier that you just walked through. And in terms of scale, if you're doing something on the web, chances are you can scale out very rapidly as well. You don't have to worry about spikes. You don't have to suddenly put 5 more boxes online. You simply ramp up depending on the model of the cloud. Either you go spin up 5 new instances, or if the cloud service is providing some kind of automation for you, it'll actually spin those up automatically. Even better, if you have a spike and then something comes, your traffic drops, you don't have 5 boxes now sitting there unused. You just spin down whatever instances are running in the cloud. So you get that true elasticity that you might not otherwise have if you have a bunch of boxes sitting on premises. And that allows you to focus on what it is that you do best. What is the key thing that you're trying to deliver? Is it an experience? Is it a set of content? Is it a recommendation engine with a library? Or is it a bunch of infrastructure? I would argue that it's not the infrastructure, it's that end piece, and that's where you, as some sort of streaming media provider, is trying to add the most value. And if any of you here are in the origin server hardware business, then I apologize, because maybe that doesn't apply to you, unless you're selling to the cloud folks. So then if we take a look at if you think of that previous diagram, and then you think about what that means when we have all those different pieces. We have the back end and the archiving and the folder system and the content management and the workflow and the analytics and a web server or 2 or 3 or 10 mixed in to deliver other content associated with your media experience, whether it's a web page or their playlists or what have you, and that you're trying to deliver to a whole bunch of clients, what you have is something that might look more like this, and it could all be hosted in the cloud. And all you have to do is get the content to the cloud and tell it where to go out on the edges. So I'm going to skip 3 slides and go right on to the continuum. So if you're doing it on premises, this is the stack, the general stack. I don't know if you guys can see. Can you see it? All right. Sorry, you can't see it. So it starts at the bottom with networking and goes up to storage, servers, virtualization, OS, middleware, runtime, data, and applications. And in an on-premises model, you end up owning all of that stack, top to bottom. If you are, in fact, running on infrastructure as a service, though, the vendor, the boxes in the green, ends up owning the 4 bottom layers, the networking, the storage, the servers, and the virtualization. Now, you have to bring an operating system, install it, install whatever middleware, and that could be not only the applications that you end up running, but which are also part of the stack, but the actual middleware in terms of the glue or the broader pieces, the management layer that actually maybe makes 5 separate instances that you have spin up and down appropriately based on the volume of traffic that you're getting. If you go one more level, an example of that's Amazon Web Services. If you go one more level, it's platform as a service. And now you see that most of the boxes are in green and managed by a vendor. In this case, one example would be Windows Azure Media Services. And that leaves only for you data and applications to deal with. So again, now you're just focusing on your customers and the actual user experience that they are having. And then the final model is software as a service, and that is where somebody takes care of all of that work for you. And I'll give one example that I think fits the bill. In some cases, I think it's platform as a service, but for many folks, I think software as a service applies to a site like encoding.com, where all you do is it can be as simple as you point to a file on your desktop, upload it, they encode it for you, put it somewhere on a website, and hand you back a universal URL that allows any client to hit it, no matter what the client is. And so they take care of all that in between. All you do is create the content and give people the URL to reach the content. But today I'm going to focus mostly on Amazon Web Services and Windows Azure Media Services. And so I want to do a demo of how to actually get started with each of those. So first I'm going to start with Amazon Web Services. And at a high level, what Amazon Web Services provides you is the ability to deliver over HTTP with Adobe's HTTP dynamic streaming format, Apple's HTTP live streaming format, and Microsoft Smooth Streaming. They provide very simple tutorials, and in fact, that's what the demo is. I'll be walking you through one of their tutorials. They do a lot of extra work for you, though, that you might not expect based on my previous discussion about what infrastructure as a service provides. They provide a lot of templates and a lot of automation to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So as you'll see, what happens is they provide a template that spins up an instance of Windows Server running IIS Media Services already pre-configured to accept an incoming feed from an encoder, and they also provision all their Amazon CloudFront CDN edge points to receive that stream and pass it on and scale out your stream globally. So it makes it very simple to get started even with infrastructure as a service. Everything you do there, just as you would expect in the cloud, is pay as you go. And the difference with infrastructure as a service is you still maintain full control of the streaming media server. So I won't do it as part of the demo, but you can log into your streaming media server and configure anything you want. So if there's something you need to customize, go ahead. And the other thing about, I guess, using Amazon to think about is that you also are able to choose the size, the instance type that you need, because they come in micro, small, medium, large, extra large, clustered, high availability, high memory. So you have a whole wide set of options, and depending on what your needs are, you may be able to choose or may want to choose different instant types. You can also choose which regions of the world to deliver to, which of the 8 AWS regions. So you can either scope your event to say, hey, I know all my users are in the U.S. and on the West Coast, so I'm just going to stream everything through the U.S. West, North California edge location. Or you may realize, people are everywhere. I'm going to open it up to all 8 regions. So let's do now, here's where we switch into demo mode and see how much trouble I can get into. Let's see. All right. Stretching a little, but we can live with it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is type live smooth streaming AWS tutorial, so you don't have to remember anything. And let's see if this is the right link. It is. So this basically, it took us right to a tutorial that has about 10 different steps for getting started with streaming with Amazon Web Services to do live streaming with smooth streaming. And when you do smooth streaming, that means you also have the capability to deliver content with HTTP live streaming to iOS devices. So basically, you can hit most desktops and most mobile devices. So I'm going to skip right to the second step. The first step is, well, basically just gives you an overview of what the service is. But I'm going to start with creating an Amazon Web Services account. How many here have an Amazon Web Services account? All right, a few hands up there. So the first thing is, you create the account, and essentially you just go to aws.amazon.com and you'd say sign up on the sign up now link, and type in, assuming most of you probably have an Amazon account, you can just type in your account information there. I already have one. I'm going to skip this step. The next step is step number 2. Then it says that, so here this is set up so there's a previous and a next link at the upper right and the bottom right. And so I'll just choose next. And the next step is actually creating an Amazon EC2 key pair. And this is how you maintain essentially a level of security that you're the right person at accessing the content up on your Amazon Web Services. So what it tells you to do is to go into the Amazon console and create a key pair. And I'll just show you that real quickly, what that looks like. Okay, so this is the console. And what you see here are down the left a list of things that you might want to do when you're in the console. In fact, there's actually above that is a services box, and you can see the full list of Amazon Web Services, or at least a pretty high level list. And over in the upper right, in this area, you see what I actually have running in the region, which is US West, North California, which is shown in the upper left drop down. So just to show you, here are all the different regions that are currently supported. And there's 7 listed there at the moment, and I believe there's an 8th one as well. Now I already have a key pair. I'm going to click on the key pair just to show you. Here's my key pair. So it's already created. I don't need to create one, but if you wanted to, you would just click on the Create Pair box, give it some kind of name. I called mine SMW Cloud for Streaming Media West Cloud, and hit Create, and then it just populates this list. Since I've already done it, I'll go back. We've created the EC2 key pair, and I'm going to choose Next and go to the next item here. So next is to actually set up the CloudFormation stack. This is that template that I was talking about that actually builds out a specific set of cloud services or web services that you need to deliver your content. And so I will do that. And the first thing is to go back to that console and go to CloudFormation, which is on the list here. And make sure that I'm in the correct region, which is US West, North California. And to create a new stack, there's a button up here that says Create New Stack. And you just click on that. In fact, it's even easier than that. If you go back to this article and walk through the steps, they actually give you a direct link to set up this stack for the live smooth streaming. And I passed it somewhere. That's weird. Step 1. Oh, I see. These links actually generate. They don't just take you there. I'm sorry. Thanks very much. Okay, so it's not highly clear from going by fast. You actually just click on one of these links. You think you're just going to a region. What it's actually doing is setting up the CloudFormation in the region for you. So here we go. It's brought up what's called a stack, a create stack dialog box, and the first stack name is live smooth streaming, so they've already pre-populated the template, given it a name. They've provided a template URL, which you don't change down here. And to show advanced options, you can go and click this, and this allows you to say, yes, I want to get notified when things are happening. So I'll go ahead and say, yes, send me some information. We'll call it stack is ready, and I'll send it to my mail. And then there are a couple of other options too, which included being able to, if it failed, roll back, and if it took too long to set up, you can actually set a timeout. So once I hit OK, then the next thing it does is say, all right, tell us what your key pair is. Now remember, I created this earlier, and it was SMW Cloud, so I'll just type that in. That's how it associates this cloud formation with me and my account. And so now it's saying, okay, here's what we've done. We're setting up this stack called Live Smooth Streaming. It says estimated cost is a cost. It takes you to a link so you can figure out what the price will be. It's going to set up an extra large instance using the key pair SMW Cloud, and it's going to send me notifications when things start happening. And just to risk really getting in trouble, I'm going to go ahead and open Outlook so we can see some of those things come in. Who knows what good stuff we'll see. All right. Okay, and so I've already got the first notification saying, look, you've set up notifications to something called Stack Ready. And reminders. Wonderful. I apologize for that. Okay, let's head back. Continue, and then it starts kicking off things. Oh, it's telling me it already exists. Well, yes, that's true. I did create it earlier just in case, because sometimes this process takes 15 to 20 minutes. So rather than create that, I'll just take the one that we already have and say, look, it's already created. Julia Child style, I just pull it right out of the oven right after I put it in the pan. So let's head back to the step-by-step. So now we've created that stack. We've fired off the CloudFormation template. Let's go to the next topic. Now you want to verify that this is actually running. So it's fairly easy to do. You go into the CloudFormation stack, you click on that instance that you just created, and look down below in the outputs box. Oops. Oh, I forgot about that. All right. So here's a tip for you. If you're using Internet Explorer, it does not like resizing Amazon Web Services boxes. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. All right. So now I'm in Chrome. And I'm going to click on the stack, and I'm going to resize that box so you can actually see the Outputs tab. And now in here, I can actually, there's a link here to the Smooth Streaming server. And I can click on the link, and boom, suddenly there I am looking at the web page on a server that has been set up and pre-populated with IIS Media Services already running. And this validates that, in fact, that is there and accessible now. So, having done that, and what I'm going to do just to simplify things is put it all into Chrome here, shut IE. Okay, so we verified that it's running, and that's good. So now we go to the next page. So this is an interesting part. There are a few steps in here that I think you can skip, and I'll tell you why. So the next few steps are get your Windows password, log into your server, start Expression Encoder. The problem is there are a few steps missing in the template. If you're at all familiar with AWS, you'll figure them out very easily. But one of the steps is that it says go to your server running on AWS and open Expression Encoder to create the content. Well, there is no Expression Encoder mounted in that image, so you can't really do that. You have to purchase it first and download it or upload it. And the other thing is they don't tell you that if you haven't done it yet, you have to set up port 3389 to let remote desktop connections go through if you want to use Windows to reach that desktop. But the good news is, because that server is already running and everything I need is already there, I don't actually need to do this step. And I'll show you why. Because what I'm going to do is just run Expression Encoder locally, push the stream up to that server, and then play back from there. And let it push it out across CloudFront to me. So I'm going to skip to the next page, which is about encoding your live stream. And what this does is walks you through, tells you where to go if you want to get Expression Encoder. And so it takes you to the home page, and you can download the trial, but if you want to use any H.264-based codecs, you have to buy it. And it costs $199, shows you all the neat features and things here. I already have it, so we're going to skip that. But it tells you then, step by step, how you actually start a live broadcast. And I'm just going to go ahead and fire off Expression on here. And so first thing that comes up is this dialog box saying, do you want to do transcoding? Do you want to create a Silverlight project or live broadcasting? I'm going to choose live broadcasting because we're actually going to try and do a live broadcast on a stage out of a conference venue. Just to be crazy. So first thing is, in the middle of that window you see there, the video window, it actually walks you through a number of steps that you have to do. It always misses one, but I'll tell you that when we get to it. So the first is add a live source. And so what it does is brings up a queue window over in the upper left, and then you go choose a video device. I have an integrated camera in this laptop, so I'll just fire that up. There we go. Don't know if you can see, but I am up on there. And then I'll also add an audio device, just so we don't confuse anything. All right. So now we have some content. And what I'll do now is go over and choose the encoding parameter. And this is the part that always gets left off on the list in that little blank window, the video window in the middle. And I'm going to choose widescreen encoding, H.264, and I'm going to choose IIS smooth streaming to iPhone cell. And what that does is set up for me down in the encode tab a set of, basically it's a template for CBR content, constant bitrate content, at a single bitrate of 350 kilobits per second, which is great for demo purposes. But there are a number of profiles up here that go all the way up to 720p and can cover a broad range. In fact, I'll click on 720p for a moment and just show you what that looks like. And when you do that, you end up getting everything from 200 kilobits per second up to 3.2 megabits per second. But I'll choose that cell phone and hit apply. And the next thing I really need to do is just specify my output and where it's going to go. So the location of this is that CloudFormation server that I talked about a moment ago. So if we go back to that real quick. Of course, I closed that tab, so I need to go find it again. All right, so here we are back in the CloudFormation part of the portal, and I will choose my instance, and from the outputs, oops, bad click. From the outputs now, I can choose to get my live publish point location. That is this line here. So not only does this thing pre-set up everything, it gives you all the links that you need to actually get things working. So now I paste that into the publishing point location on Expression Encoder. And hit connect. And it's going to say, oh, you have to give me some credentials before I'm going to let you do that. So here is the only place where you need that password to actually do this part. That step that I skipped earlier. And what I'll do is I have that available. I did grab the password earlier. And here it is. So I'll grab the password here and paste it in. So I have credentials to get to that IIS media server on Amazon Web Services. That's interesting. Well, okay, so this is a little bit more challenging. This is not what happened during practice. What it says is the error message is the publishing point is in use, reset it on the server. And what's interesting about that is that usually there is a box in Expression Encoder that allows you to just reset it from here. That was a feature that was added in the most recently published version of Expression Encoder. If it's already in use, though, I don't really want to take the time because you won't get to see the Windows Azure Media demo if I were actually to log in and get to that. What would happen normally, though, is it would start streaming. It would show up there in the Expression Encoder window. You would see, let's see if that works. No, it's not going to work. Anyway, yeah, so you would continue to see me there, and then we'd go back over to the portal page, and one of the links on there is the Smooth Streaming Player. And I would click that, and normally you would see my face coming back, and chances are, because it's already in use and it's not using it for my camera, it may be sitting there streaming, but we're not going to see anything. But this worked really well in practice. All right, so let's see. Let's continue through the steps, just so you know what you would do. And that's my fault. I mean, I set it up ahead of time and then disconnected my computer and brought it down and set it back up here, but left that publishing point running up there without anything going into it. And I hadn't tested for that scenario. Okay, so this is the view the live stream step, and that is just going to that link that I just showed you, where it pops up the player and shows you that your stream is actually working. And then the last thing is to delete that cloud formation, because if you let it sit there, even as I let it sit there for a couple of hours since I last tried it, it's sitting there spinning. It's churning the meters for Amazon. So even if you're not doing anything, and it's not doing a whole lot, you're still getting charged 45 cents an hour or something, whatever it costs to run an extra large instance. And so to do that, I just go back to the CloudFormation page. And where it says create complete, I just say delete stack. And that'll delete the whole thing. So it says delete in progress, and a few minutes afterwards, that it will tear down the server that I put up and all of the points it made on the CloudFront CDN. All right, so let's skip now. That is basically, at a high level, what you saw mostly was, in a number of about 10 minutes, I set up a CloudFormation template. You would have had an extra 20 minutes in there waiting for the actual server and the edge locations to spin up and be provisioned. So in about half an hour, you can set up this whole end-to-end scenario where you're doing live streaming off a laptop that goes globally and through highly scalable CDN and just paying for what you've actually used. All right, so now the other thing that I want to do is show you a little about, here, let's do this. Let's now go to Azure Media Services. And I'll do the demo there. And basically what's going to happen is there'll be a few parts to it. The first is ingest. And how Windows Azure Media Services is set up is that, as I noted before, they've abstracted all of that, building out the machines and everything for you. Everything's virtualized. You don't have to see the operating system in that sense. And so what they've done is just create a video workflow that you can access via an API. You don't have to go and set up machines. You simply write to an API, and you can set up ingesting of your content, encoding of your content, packaging of the content, encrypt the content, and then deliver it. And you can do it all through remote calls, through remote API calls. And so it's very flexible and allows you to establish a whole end-to-end video workflow in a number of minutes. And so, again, it abstracts one more layer of infrastructure and makes it much easier. So with the ingest, you can do things like you secure upload where you pre-encrypt the content. You can do HTTPS. You can use Aspera to do high-speed UDP uploads. With the encoder that's built into Windows Azure Media Services is based on Expression Encoder. It's now Windows Azure Media Encoder. And it supports encoding to H.264 VC1 video. Also supports AAC and Dolby Digital Plus and a few other things. And it allows you to do the encryption with PlayReady or Common Encryption or AES. You can also use third-party encoders that will be available through Windows Azure Media Services. And those are called built-in encoders, where they have actually integrated their encoding capability right into this API, so it just becomes part of the API call. Similarly, you can deliver and package content using third-party servers, and that's where Wowza comes in. Wowza will be one of the build-in partners for media servers. So if you prefer to use Wowza to reach Flash clients and to do Flash streaming, for instance, you'll be able to do so, again, just through the API call. And eventually that encryption capability with Play Ready for Smooth and HLS and Dash will be there. So far, this is only on demand. It is not yet available for live streaming, although it was proven in production for the Olympics. So for London 2012 Olympics, a number of broadcasters used live streaming over Windows Azure Media Services to prove out the infrastructure. So we know it works, it's just got to get finalized for billing and everything else so that everyone can get to it. All right, so let's do a quick demo of that so you see what that's like. It's an actually faster demo. This one only works in IE. I'm sure, again, just a coincidence. So go to windowsazure.com, that's where we'll start. And here's where you can try a free trial. And just click on this, try for free. And the other thing to do is just look at the features. You'll find what has just been turned on as a preview of media. So here it's listing the high-level features, how you can build websites or virtual machines or cloud services or data services. And now media is one of the big options. So you can learn more about that. And it takes you here and shows you the high-level things that the Media Services API will allow you to do. And what they've done here is, for folks who don't want to use the API, oh, thank you, you can't actually see that. Thank you for those of you gesticulating in the audience. I appreciate that. I need to do that other thing. There we go. Let's see if that works. Okay. So, my bad. Let me back up a step. Okay, this is the Windows Azure, windowsazure.com, and what I did was click on the orange features box. That took me to the description of what's in Windows Azure, including the media platform as a service capability. And it describes at a high level some of the features that are available. And there's a video here too that shows you kind of how to get started. It will be updated shortly. I'm going to jump right to the portal just in the interests of time. And so this takes me into the management portal, similar to that portal that we saw on Amazon Web Services. A little less cluttered, but maybe that's because think of it as either there are fewer services or a lot of the services have been combined into higher level platform as a service offerings. And so there are fewer things to distract you. So I have storage set up and one media service, and I'll go to that one media service. And the first thing it does is bring up a dashboard that shows what my usage has been of different services. And all it shows is that I uploaded a file about an hour ago. And how much memory or how much storage I'm using down on the bottom. That's what that green bar is showing. I'm using 352 megabytes of storage. If I click on the Content tab near the top, it will bring up a list of the content that I've already uploaded to Windows Azure Media Services. It's really easy to upload. Just click on the upload arrow at the bottom. Find something on your browser. And of course, this is the how you do it through the browser method. You also, with API, you'll be able to specify a plethora of options for uploading. And so if I were going to upload something from here, I just go grab a video that I have one from a video camera, an MTS file, and check the OK button. And it starts uploading that. And you may be able to see at the bottom there's a gray box with some fluctuating lines giving me basically a notification. It's a notification bar that gives me status. And it says, hey, you're uploading this file up to Windows Azure Media Services. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and grab one that I've already uploaded. And so what happens is, if you take one that's been uploaded, you can then say, I wish to encode it. So that's down at the bottom, right next to the play box. I can hit encode and choose from currently 3 profiles. They're using those just to get started. You can set it to playback on iOS devices and PC or Mac. You can have playback, the profile, it's targeted more at all HTML5 players, which means it's going to create MP4 content that is progressively downloaded. Or maybe one that's a little bit more interesting for some of you, if you haven't caught on to this yet. It's playback on PC and Mac using Flash and Silverlight. So there's been a lot of I don't know, discussion in the market about Silverlight's health and where it's going. That doesn't get answered here, but it's interesting to see that effectively they're saying, look, we can do streaming, smooth streaming to Flash now as well. So that opens up a lot more desktops and devices for receiving smooth streaming and play-ready content. And if I were to click OK on that, then I get another status bar at the bottom saying, hey, you're not only uploading a file, you're now also encoding a file. And I'll let it go, and that's fine. But in the meantime, again, Julia Child style, if I had already finished this, then I could go and look at one of these others. Let's say I had one, a different one here. So I can pick out one of these videos and say I want to publish it. Now, all of these, except my source files, have already been published. Just for fun, nope, it doesn't let me choose a source. Okay. So I will actually unpublish one and then show you how I publish. So you can just hit unpublish to take it down. This is how easy it is to get the content out there on the edge on the Azure CDN so you can actually access it. All right, too many notifications now. All right, so it's been unpublished. So to publish it, I would just click on this output file and hit the publish button at the bottom, and it asks me, are you sure you want to publish that? And it starts working on it, and a moment later it's published. So now that is the file. In fact, actually, that's the file I just uploaded, so great. So now we can choose to play the file and make sure that it came out all right. My bad. Got to hit the play button, I guess. Sorry. I love video. Let's try a different one. No! Oh, dear. Please stand by. There we go. Okay. So at least one of them was working. And what you see here, they're still working out some of the fine-tuning in the player itself. But what it's showing you is the bit rate at which it's playing. Right now it's truncating all the different quality levels Testing. To the nearest 1, 2, integer there. So you see 3 1 megabit streams, and it's really 1.1, 1.5, 1.8, that kind of thing. But basically that allows you to have an immediate test of whether or not that content encoded correctly, play it back, and ensure that it's there. And then when you're done, of course, if you want to stop being charged for storage and all, you would just select all of these and hit the delete button. All right, so time to wrap. So what you've seen here is both a quick preview of what Amazon Web Services provides through their EC2 capabilities, their CloudFormation capabilities in Amazon CloudFront. And then a quick sneak peek of what Windows Azure Media Services will provide at both through the UI level and even more explicitly through the API level. And so very soon, well, today you can do the stuff with Amazon, both on-demand and live, and very soon you'll be able to use Windows Azure Media Services to deliver content easily as well, and let them do all that infrastructure setup and operating system setup and everything for you. So for a quick comparison, just a quick review. The model of Amazon Web Services versus Windows Azure Media Services, infrastructure as a platform, or infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service. They both offer multiple flavors of on-demand and live smooth streaming, or at least Windows Azure Media Services will offer live smooth streaming soon, and HLS. The partner model is a little different. With Amazon, it's you take partners who are in their marketplace and you add them on top of what you're doing, or you load up your own applications, whereas with Windows Azure Media Services, some of that will be built in, and all you have to do is change a variable on an API call in order to use a third-party encoder, third-party DRM, third-party server. With Windows Azure being a little newer to the business, it has fewer regions, data centers, and edge locations, but it is global and growing. But Amazon Web Services clearly has a broader infrastructure built out at this point because they've been in the business. And, you know, frankly, think about it. Amazon.com was built out first, and using that infrastructure, Amazon said, hey, you know, we've already got this tremendous e-commerce platform with global web capabilities. Let's build on that and open it up for third parties to use. And that's where that came from. So it's already been out there for many years and has been well tested in the real world. The pricing on Amazon Web Services can be fairly low. So if you were going to do something like a high-quality stream, decent quality stream at least, and you're assuming that each user, I priced it out the other day just to see, using a large instance with that CloudFront formation template that I showed you for about, for a user to watch 1 hour of 1 megabit per second average bitrate content cost about 43 cents. And obviously the numbers go down as your volumes go up, because Amazon does offer tiered pricing. With Azure, we're not sure yet. The numbers haven't been released, but chances are it'll be a little bit higher because they're building that platform as a service layer on top of the infrastructure. So I would guess that it would probably be a little bit higher to cover the costs of their investment in running that layer of abstraction for you. If you're interested, I also threw in a slide from the 3-hour workshop yesterday that just tells you which media servers are supported on which of these offerings. Effectively, IS Media Services is both on AWS and Windows Azure. Adobe is on AWS but not on Azure. And Wowza Media Server is on AWS but not yet in Azure because they're still building it up. And all 3 servers are offered on different cloud offerings. Okay, that's it. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for coming.